Hey gang, do you find yourself listening to your music on one app and then listening to your podcast on another app? If you do, stop this insane behavior right now and download Spotify. Spotify is home to all of your favorite music and all of your favorite podcasts. Podcasts including Fly on the Wall, the Saturday Night Live podcast with Dana Carvey and David Spade, the Rock on Tours podcast with Gary Kemp and Guy Pratt, old favorites like Fresh Air, My Favorite Murder, Wait, Don't Tell Me. Look, if you're looking for a news podcast or sports or entertainment or true crime, look, if you're looking for a sewing podcast or an RV podcast, Spotify has all of this for you. That's Spotify. All of your favorite music and all of your favorite podcasts in one place. Find it in your app store and start listening today. That's Spotify, music and podcasts. Let's get down.
You gotta open the vault.
Open my vault?
Open your vault.
Once I open the vault, it ceases to be a vault.
You have no choice.
Wait, the vault.
How did I get here from the vault? And now, here's your host, Johnny Dowdy.
All right, hello, I'm Johnny. I'm your host, and welcome to another episode of How Did I Get Here from the Vault, where we reach back into our vault of well over 1,000 episodes, pull one out, shine it up, and re-release it for you, just in case you missed it or in case you want to hear it again. Gang, today we go back to episode 847. Originally released in October of 2019, where I talked to legendary, award-winning blues artist Marcia Ball, known for her piano playing and singing around the world. This woman shares her fantastic and amazing story and her journey in music with me. We have such a great conversation of how she started out in Louisiana, made her way to Texas, and then became the Marcia Ball we all start to know, you know? The records that she made with Angela Straley and Luann Barton, and how those were like a staple in My Ex-Wife in My House. Great conversation. How she, her early 70s band here in Austin, Frida and the Fire Dogs, how she passed on Jerry Wexler's offer. If you know Jerry Wexler from Atlantic Records, she did pass on his offer. But you know what? She's got a life, a rich life with a lot to say. In fact, I'm going to go back and play a little bit of my intro from the original episode 847, and then you'll hear my brilliant conversation with the legendary artist Marcia Ball. All right? Enjoy this one from episode 847 in October of 2019. Marcia Ball, let's get down.
How did I get here from the vault?
The legendary Marcia Ball moved here almost 50 years ago. I guess 50 years ago from Baton Rouge. She was on her way to San Francisco with her husband, and her car broke down in Austin. She ended up knowing some Baton Rouge guys here. She got turned on to the scene, and she stayed here. She's still here. She's amazing. I don't know. I mean, I imagine everyone listening to this show probably knows her name at least, but she is a fascinating person. I mean, she was part of this scene. Like, she had a band. She was in this band, Frida and the Fire Dogs, in like 70 to 74 when the Armadillo first opened. She was around for a lot of that stuff. She had a residency at the Broken Spoke with one of the bands she was in. Then she went out on her own solo career, and she's been doing stuff ever since. She's done these amazing records as a trio. Once with her album Dreams Come True with Luann Barton and Angela Straley. And then again, she did a record called Sing It with Irma Thomas and Tracy Nelson, which was nominated for a Grammy. Absolutely fantastic. I had met her a long time ago. She didn't remember. I asked her, but I used to live in this studio here called the Congress House, and she went in there to do some demos. And I lived there, and so I ended up kind of by default kind of hanging out with her a little bit, and she was always really nice to me. She's extremely cool, and she is a badass musician. She is 100% just the coolest, and just, she's got it together, man. And I gotta say this, when she first came into my apartment, she went over to my piano and played it. So my piano has, in some ways, I think, been blessed. I've had some pretty cool people play that piano. Bruce Sudano, it's Donna Summer's husband, who wrote all the great songs. He played that piano. Now, the amazing Marcia Ball. Now, gang, Marcia Ball is going to be performing at the 9th Annual Swan Song Serenade, taking place October 20th at the Four Seasons here in Austin. It takes place from 6 to 10 p.m. The host will be Jody Denberg. Marcia Ball will be on stage performing with Shelley King and various other musicians, the great Sarah Brown on bass, and with her own band. So there's great entertainment. Tickets are $150. You can go to swansongs.org to get involved and get the tickets for the show. It's going to be amazing. Swan Songs is a nonprofit started by my dear old friend Christine Albert, who was on a couple episodes ago. And she comes on every year, and we talk about the Swan Song Serenade. What is Swan Songs? Swan Songs is a nonprofit that provides music for people at the end of their life, like people in hospice, people that are about to go, and they want to hear their favorite song or their favorite music or maybe their favorite artist. And this Swan Song Serenade raises money for that. It's their biggest fundraiser of the year. So go to swansongs.org to get involved with what's going on. Get your tickets for the Swan Song Serenade taking place Sunday, October 20th at the Four Seasons here in Austin, Texas. And now, without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with this amazing, amazing musician and artist, the incredible Marcia Ball. Let's get down. Congress House, and you were making an album there, and do you remember what album that was?
Well, I think we demoed there.
Okay.
I don't think it was. I don't think we have any of the albums that are recorded there, but I remember we went and demoed there.
Yeah.
So do you remember when it was?
It was
early
like
90s?
91 or 92.
Yeah, early 90s.
Yeah. You've known Mark since back then?
Yes.
Whenever he moved here in the late 70s? Yeah.
Yeah, I have.
Have you been here you live here?
I moved here in 1970.
Okay. All right. When your car broke down.
Yeah.
Do you believe in fate?
Yes.
Okay, because when I read that, I was like, it's one of those things because you're iconic on a lot of levels, but you're iconic as being from here and part of this particular scene.
Yeah, and I recognize the unique quality of Austin even before we moved here. A year before that, I had come here with my roommate from Baton Rouge, and her brother lived here. Mm-hmm. And we came and spent a weekend, drove all night, got here at 8 o'clock in the morning, went to his house on San Antonio Street, middle of July, hot as hell, and they weren't even there. So here's a fate moment here. This is 1968. And we went in his house, and there was a turntable, a record player in there. There was a record on the record player. Nobody was around. The front door's open. It's 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And we lifted the needle and put the needle down on the LP, and it was music from Big Pink, which was the first time I ever heard it.
Yeah.
And so immediately I'm in this wonderful place. I recognize that. And there's a soundtrack that blows my mind in terms of how the music is and where exactly I wanted to go musically.
Right. Because they were kind of the first band that introduced sort of this intense roots.
Exactly.
To that rock scene.
The integration of all the styles, but yet just something so new and unheard of.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like Sweetheart of the Rodeo.
Right.
It wasn't like the Bob Dylan, the Nashville Skyline.
Right.
It wasn't even Emmylou and
Graham Parsons.
Graham Parsons.
Yeah.
It is and remains something completely unique.
I wonder if it's because it was kind of made outside the system. Didn't they make that record in Woodstock?
Oh yeah, in Big Pink.
Like no one's there to
with
put their hands in it.
With a bunch of people outside the system. You know, you did have the foundation of a lot of roots because you had Levon, and you know the whole Ronnie Hawkins thing going where they had been backing up, you know, a rockabilly legend.
Right.
But then you brought in Garth Hudson with the you know, his classical background and his his keyboard, and then Robbie Robertson with the Canadian folk tradition and his Native American or Native North American bloodlines, and just a lot of influences that
Yeah, and Levon's profoundly Southern
exactly
vibe. Like,
exactly
yeah.
and
Yeah.
all of them. So, and then the incredible voices. So yeah,
Yeah.
They were just something else, and I don't think ever been approached in terms of being like I've used the word now twice or three times, a unique and original sound.
Totally. And they really, like, the guys, like, I know George Harrison and Eric Clapton were like, stopped what they were doing, and they were like, I got to try and do what this is doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. We all did.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing. That record came out the year I was born. I stopped what I was doing and changed my direction
Exactly,
as well.
right there.
So you're doing this Swan Song Serenade. And have you actually gone and played for someone at the end of the...
I have not.
Not?
No, I've never been asked to do that. I've done it informally, but I've never done it as a swan song.
Yeah. Christine
envoy.
was saying is that the music's getting newer and newer. It's not as much Frank Sinatra that people are requesting since she started it. It's a lot more music that we are really familiar with.
Yeah.
And, people in our sort of wheelhouse. Or people
well, that would be absolutely true.
Yeah.
And unfortunate.
Totally unfortunate, but it's the inevitable, right?
Yeah.
And it's nice to know that she provides that sort of thing. So you're gonna play with a bunch of people. Am
Sarah
I right?
Brown is playing bass on part of it. My band is playing on part of it. Our guests are Shelley King and Lou Ann Barton, and we are going to sing a bunch of stuff together.
Yeah.
And we do this occasionally in various combinations for various, usually nonprofits.
Yeah.
And you never know what might happen.
Yeah.
Who might sing what.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure people are going to have a great time, and I know it's for such a great cause. Yeah.
Very great.
Yeah. Do you take a piano places? No. You have to play.
Well, when we travel, when we tour, usually backline is provided. That means we travel with a bass, a guitar, a saxophone, some drumsticks, and a module that I carry that makes any keyboard provided sound like my keyboard.
Okay.
And so typically not. But in town, or if we're playing somewhere where we're driving, I bring a keyboard.
Okay. Do you, I bet you, I mean, do you ever get stuff that, like, doesn't have weighted keys and stuff, or like semi-weighted keys, and does that mess you up? I mean,
it could, and it's very rare that happens. It happened last summer one time with a friend who has concerts in a barn, and it was such a wonderful gig. I wanted to play it anyway, but he didn't really have a keyboard. We squeaked by with what he had.
Yeah.
And now I'm helping him try to find an inexpensive keyboard that would work, that MIDIs and functions and has good weighted keys, which you can get for under $500 easily.
Yeah.
I mean, mine, I bought mine for $3.
Yeah.
So, a little Yamaha. If you watch the Craigslists.
Yeah, you can find them.
Yeah.
I use I play keyboards in this band Skyrocket, but it's a cover band, so I have to have a lot of different stuff. So I go like through a keyboard into my computer to get the sounds.
Well, that's going to be my new challenge, is that my module MIDIs into keyboards, and now fewer keyboards are MIDIing, and more of them are doing the computer, the USB.
Yeah, the USB, yeah.
And I'm going to have to figure out an alternative, figure out how to do that. Or just quit.
I have two very specific questions. One of them is I'm good friends with Johnny Medina, who I love, and I love that you have a photo of him on your website because he loves working with you.
25 years.
25 years.
25 years at least. And I got to tell you, when I met him and we basically interviewed him, and that would have been in the early 90s, I had Rodney Craig in the band. Rodney was a drummer, and
he was working at Liberty Lunch then, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Doing sound there, yeah.
Well, he may have been not doing that anymore. He'd been working. I'd met him when he came to my house with Mark Guerra to take photos of me. And he was working as Mark's photo assistant, and he was into that and fishing. And we interviewed him and talked to him, and two things. One is that I don't think he would have probably signed on with just me, but I think Rodney was cool enough that he thought, well, I can work with this guy, so I'll take the job. And my other thing was, I just thought, he'll never take this job. He's too cool for this job. So here we are.
Do you not see yourself as cool?
Not in the sense of super cool. I know what we do. I know what we've got, and I know, I'm in many ways stable, and I've got a lot of history, and I mean, I'm cool enough, but I'm not cool like Johnny.
Maybe, I guess, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you realize this, but I am going to call. Not only did you come to my apartment and talk to me, and I have a recording of it, but I'm going to call a couple people after you leave and be like, no, she played my piano. So it has some magic on it now. The other question I had is from the photos on your website, and that is, you won an award. I can't remember what it was, but you were presented this award by Ike Turner and David Johansen. How did you even do a speech? I would have just been going like...
Well, I had to kind of yank the award out of Ike Turner's hands. So I was a little thrown by that. He did not exactly easily let go of that.
Yeah.
So we're up there going, and then I grab it and I've got it. And that would have been the one for the record that Doyle Bramhall produced.
Okay.
So, and Doyle was there, and so I got to hold it up and say, look, Doyle, this is what we did. We got it. And that kind of overshadowed everything else that was going on.
Oh, that's great. That's great. He was such a profound influence on so much music that comes out of here, and of course the rest of the world, but such a profound influence on what happens here. Was he great to work with?
Doyle?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Doyle was great, and, great drummer. And then when I was getting ready to make, it was it wasn't the Poodle record.
Was that your dog at the time?
I did have a poodle. It wasn't my dog, because my dog wasn't that pretty.
Okay.
But we did have a poodle. When we were getting ready to make that record, I was trying to figure out who was going to produce my next record, and I was driving down to Louisiana to see my mother, and with CDs in the stereo, when you had CDs and stereos in your cars, and which I still do, by the way. And Fitchburg Street, I had Doyle's album, Fitchburg Street, and I put it in there, and I thought, man, I'd like to make a record that sounds like this. And then bing, light bulb.
Maybe call the guy.
Maybe I could get the guy.
Yeah.
And that's how that came up. So we had a lot of fun. We brought in a bunch of friends from Louisiana because he had a good connection. When Doyle played with me and we went to Louisiana, little Doyle would travel with us in the summer. He was 16. And when we got to Lafayette to play, he met this Lafayette character, Charles Adcock, C.C. Adcock.
Oh, yeah.
And they became fast friends and are to this day friends. And that brought us all together. So when we were making the record, Doyle brought Charles over to do stuff, and that was great because he's a wild card and wonderfully creative. And we had Pat Bro, who's a great accordion player, saxophone player from down there, come in. And the other cool thing was that Charles brought a song called Let the Tears Roll Down that was written by Lee Harris, Little Queenie, who just passed away about a month ago. A legendary New Orleans band leader. Her band, Little Queenie and the Percolators, had John Magny and Tommy Malone in it, who were subdudes.
Okay.
I knew those guys then.
Yeah.
77, I guess I met them, 77, 78. So he brought this wonderful ballad, and we had Bonnie Bishop and Kristen DeWitt singing background on it. It was really a fun project.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You have some amazing contemporaries and people you've collaborated with.
Yes, I do.
Irma Thomas. I thought that was amazing that she was kind of the one that flipped that switch inside of you, and then you got to make a record with her later.
Irma is the thread that runs through my entire musical life, and in so many ways, just all the influences on me. from the time, growing up in Louisiana, even in Southwest Louisiana where I was, the music of New Orleans permeated, and the music of South Louisiana. So before it even had a name, the music that was called swamp pop
Right.
was there. I'm Leaving It All Up to You and Matilda and those songs. I mean, the local bands were like Cookie and the Cupcakes and the Boogie Kings. And then I had a grandmother. My grandmother lived in New Orleans, so we were there for every holiday and summer vacations. And my aunt liked to buy music, and so we had Lloyd Price and Ernie Cato and all the New Orleans music, deeper than Fats Domino, who was everywhere.
Right.
And that would have been plenty. But we had all the others, too.
Right.
So I grew up with that. And so I was 13 when I saw Irma. Somehow, against all odds, they let us, my cousin and I, who was my age, go to this big show at the Municipal Auditorium. And I'm sure everybody in the Pantheon was there. But I remember Irma. And Irma was pregnant.
Oh, wow.
Which made a big influence, big impression on me, especially when some years later I was playing music and pregnant.
Yeah.
But
How many kids do you have?
one natural and 3-step kids.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said
One the hard way. 3 the easy way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have grandkids and everything?
I do. We have 5.
Wow.
All boys.
Wow. And do they play, or you want them
The
to?
boys here are both in piano lessons. The 12-year-old is quite devoted to it, really loves it, and his 8-year-old brother wants to do whatever his brother does. So
That's awesome.
But they both have beautiful voices and really good ears, which they don't necessarily get from me. Their mother is a wonderful singer, and that family's musical too.
Okay.
So we have all that, and then up in the Northeast, we have 2 in the Boston area and 1 in Brooklyn, younger, but the 5-year-old in the Boston area just got a set of, what are they, the electronic drums for his 5th birthday.
Wow.
And he's wailing away. His dad, Jeb, Gordon's son Jeb, was about 12 or 13 when Doyle worked with me.
Okay.
And Doyle, he loved Doyle personally and musically, and became a drummer, and became a good drummer, and plays more like Doyle than almost anybody except Doyle's own stepson.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you grew up with a piano in the house, taking piano lessons?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
was it like classical? Like
It was kiddie classicals. But my grandmother played piano, and that's why, and my aunt played piano, and I was the next in line. And when I started school, the piano appeared in the living room, which I think now must have been some kind of large sacrifice for my mother, because it wasn't a big living room.
Oh, right.
And all of a sudden, I think where the sofa might have been,
There was now a piano.
there was now an upright piano like yours. So there it's sad. And my grandmother would pick me up at school and take me to piano lessons, just like I do my grandsons.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it was after you saw Irma that you were like, I can do this, or I want to do this, or no?
I didn't even imagine. But the other thing was, I was taking these little kiddie classicals, but my grandmother played popular music, and my aunt played popular music.
Okay.
And I still have boxes of sheet music. My grandmother had much more than managed to come down to me. But yesterday, for instance, my 12-year-old grandson was over. He played me some stuff that he's working on. Then I got out the Great American Songbook, some of the sheet music that I've got. I Left My Heart in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. And he loves beautiful voicings. Nice chords make him go, wow.
Yeah.
So we were, I was playing that kind of stuff. So, and he likes classical. So,
Yeah.
I don't know, we're just having fun
That's awesome.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find the name of your... Oh, Gum was the name of your first band.
Yeah. So, the way I started this thing, I guess it's not even fate, but I was in Baton Rouge. I'd gone to LSU and dropped out because I was floundering. All I had really known in getting out of high school was that I needed to get out of my hometown.
Okay.
And going to LSU, going to Baton Rouge was as far as I could afford and had the nerve, the confidence to travel. And even then, nobody knew if I was going to be able to do that because I was from a very small town. But I got there, and my roommate and I, everything changed. This was the time, and this is part of the Big Pink thing.
Yeah.
What happened in 1968 was the world was changing. 67, 68.
Yeah.
The Rolling Stones were playing. Creedence, was coming along. People were incorporating the music that I grew up in or with into popular music.
Right.
More and more.
Yeah.
Plus, we were becoming aware that to be in a band, I mean, people had been in bands, but anybody, if the Rolling Stones, if five scruffy guys could do this, and you could, then we could too.
Yeah.
So some guys were starting a band in Austin who had already been in Baton Rouge, who had already been in bands, and I had my little folk guitar, and I had written my first little heartbreak song, and hanging around my apartment, and people were hanging around because my roommate and I almost always had a pot of food on the stove.
Yeah.
I was unemployed. She was about to get married, but people hung around because we had food. And they asked me if I wanted to try out for their band. So I got in my first band in Baton Rouge, and that was Gum.
What kind of music were you guys playing?
Psychedelic rock and roll. I screamed Janis Joplin when it was new.
Yeah.
I was covering Janis and Grace Slick, and we were doing Jimi Hendrix, and then we were also doing stuff like Slim Harpo, who just lived across the river.
Right.
And a little bit of R&B and soul, a mixed bag of rock and roll and psycho and psychedelic and some blues.
And so then you were like, I'm going to move to San Francisco. Did you do that on your own or with the band?
I got married in 1969, and we knew we weren't going to stay in Baton Rouge.
Right.
And the band that I was in, Gum, broke up about right at the beginning of 69. One guitar player moved to Austin, and the other moved to San Francisco. So we were heading in that direction. Post Summer of Love, but, out for adventure.
Yeah.
But we stopped here in Austin, and the guy who moved here had two Baton Rouge roommates, both of whom were not in town. One had gone back to Louisiana to earn some money, and the other was on the run from the draft. And and so the guitar player was living in a big house in Hyde Park, and alone. And he said, I have to get drunk every night just to go to sleep. This place is scaring me to death.
Yeah.
Come and stay as long as you want. So we stopped there, and within about 3 days, we had been to the lake, we had been to Hamilton's Pool, and we went to a party over by the university, and 3 houses, these people had all thrown a big party.
Right.
And on the front porch of one of the houses, a guy named, oh my God, hold on.
Okay.
Can you edit? Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Bill Neely.
Okay.
Bill Neely was
I know
playing.
that name.
Oh, well, you should know the music.
Okay.
You would love the music. And I have cassettes of Bill Neely's. That's, and there may not be much of anything else available in this world but cassettes of Bill Neely. And Silver-Haired Daddy, he played at Threadgill's and with Mr. Threadgill. But this was like, my third night in Austin on this trip to relocate. And when I saw that, I just thought, if I can live somewhere like this. And that's not to say that Baton Rouge didn't have plenty of opportunity, but I didn't recognize it so.
Right.
We're playing rock and roll and psychedelic music. Tabby Thomas and Rayful Neal are living in Baton Rouge. They're the fathers of Chris Thomas King and Kenny Neal and the whole family. Yeah. Tabby's got a bar called the Blues Box. This would have been, if you wanted to be a blues musician or an R&B musician, you could have sat down there, 5 nights a week.
Yeah.
And Slim Harpo was still alive across the river and was related to the Neals.
Right.
But I didn't know any of that.
No.
So I had to come to Austin and hear this guy playing country blues to really open my eyes to that. But it was also like the third little check mark on why I could stay in Austin.
Yeah.
And probably the fourth one was I still wasn't all that adventurous, and it was close enough to home
Yeah.
that I could always go running back if that happened. And it was a good thing because when I did start playing music and traveling here, my first gigs were just right back down I-10.
Yeah.
And I could just go back and play the crawfish circuit down the line.
What's the crawfish circuit? That's a Gulf Coast?
That would be,
yeah.
Houston, Beaumont, Lake Charles,
Yeah.
Lafayette, Baton Rouge, New Orleans.
Yeah. That must have been exciting back then.
It's like the Cajun version of the Chitlin.
Right,
circuit.
right. So when you got like in Frida and the Fire Dogs, did you guys tour and do that stuff?
No. Houston. Actually, we went to Lansing, Michigan one time. But no, we played almost entirely in Austin. We'd go to Houston for fundraisers when they were trying to build the KPFT
Uh-huh.
radio station. And there were these gigs, Cosmic Cowboy Review, they would call it. It would be Doug Somm and Asleep at the Wheel. Willie was even on some of them. Greasy Wheels, the Fire Dogs. And we also would go down there and record over late at night at Huey Moe's studio,
Oh,
Sugar
really?
Hill.
Oh, nice, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, what a cool time in Austin. All those bands. Doug Somm brought Freddie Fender
Yeah.
up here to play. The Fire Dogs would back him up. Floyd Tillman was living here. We backed him up.
What was that like? Like, what was it like? I read that Eddie and Jesse Sublick book about the Armadillo and stuff, and I talked to them here about it, but I keep on getting, like, bits and pieces from other people, too, that, like, just, like... I remember coming here when I was a kid. We lived in Mexico, and my mom had friends here, and we would come up here and visit. And I know it must have been the Armadillo, because I was hanging out with other kids, and people were smoking weed and drinking beer and
Right.
watching some crazy dudes in blue jeans and cowboy hats playing music.
Yeah, that was us.
Yeah, still, I wonder. But so you were part of that pivotal sort of initial
Absolutely.
Armadillo scene.
When the Armadillo opened in 1970, one of the first things they did was let this play try out, do their tryouts, and they're out of town.
I remember that.
It was a group from Baton Rouge, and Ruston, Louisiana, and Alexandria, and the play was called Earl of Ruston. Well, all those guys were friends of ours. They came to town and at first stayed at our house, and the house that we rented was at Old Torf and South Lamar. It became Texas Hatters after we had it. Now it's a bead shop. And it was a big house, bigger than we needed. And so some of them stayed with us when they first came to town before they got kind of a more long-term thing. And so we were going to the Armadillo when it was first opened to see our friends rehearse and to watch the play develop.
Yeah.
Which was cool. And then it was in 1972 that the Fire Dogs formed up. And at that time, Eddie was still, struggling to figure out how to fill his place and, what was going to happen. And he would have, there were two things: Battle of the Bands, which was always, a way to get 5 bands to play for $100, because then the winner got the $100. And the other thing was fundraisers. And a friend of mine was organizing the shuttle bus drivers at the University of Texas into a union, and they needed money. So they would have fundraisers. The Fire Dogs would play fundraisers at the Armadillo for the shuttle bus drivers. And so that's how we got our foot in the door.
Wow.
As a band. And then really soon after that, when Willie moved here and that whole thing happened, that phenomenon of the and it was interesting because the Fire Dogs we were so traditional. We were not, Greasy Wheels was more original. Balcone's Fault was more original and more out there. But the Fire Dogs, we were just playing old country music. And it was as if all these guys, John grew up in Lubbock and Amarillo, Bobby Earl grew up in San Angelo. This was our music, the music they had grown up with especially, that had been taken away from them in a way by rednecks.
Yeah.
And it was our reclaiming of it. Yes, we have long hair. Yes,
Yeah.
we smoke pot.
Yeah.
But we love this music, and we still have our Levi's and our cowboy boots and our hats, and we're just going to wear them
Yeah.
and play this music. And so, by damn, we did.
Yeah.
Although it wasn't my music. Bobby Earl had to teach me all that.
Really?
Had to bring me to it. But I loved getting a chance to sing songs. I'd been screaming rock and roll.
Yeah. Yeah. Screaming the Janis songs.
Right.
So when they broke up, you became Marcia Ball, the artist.
Yes. I had to decide whether to start a band, join a band, or do something else.
Yeah.
And I joined a band for a while. That was a real country band, playing the dance halls, because the Fire Dogs always thought that's what we wanted to do. It turns out I just hated it. Because if you were a real country band, if you were the Moods of Country Music or the Bronco Brothers, which is who I joined, you were a jukebox for dancers at the Broken Spoke or Death Saw Hall. And the people danced, and they turned around and walked away. I mean, the Fire Dogs, people screamed and yelled and clapped when we played.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you're a jukebox.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't like that at all. So I started a band. I decided to start a band. And once again, as fate would have it, and just a blessing, bounteous good luck, I just have met all along the way people who have taken me in hand and been my partner in putting together a good band. And that one would have been Tommy Goldsmith, who came here as friends of the Uncle Walt's band guys.
Okay.
And there's how you link back Christine Albert.
Okay,
And the whole folk scene. Because
Right.
so much was going on all at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the folk scene was happening at Castle Creek and Saxon Pub, and the Fire Dogs were playing at Bevo's West Side Tap Room and the Split Rail. Everybody was playing at the Hungry Horse. We were all trying to get into the Armadillo. And even Angela and Luann and all of them were playing out at Alexander's off of Brody Lane. I mean, there was, and the one night had all of us.
Right.
The blues thing was about to explode, but right now it's bubbling under all the spotlight on progressive country.
Right.
So yeah, but you know what? We always, and this is what Austin still is, we always interacted, and we always cooperated
With
And
each
we-
other, like
with
as a
each other,
community. Yeah.
always.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and still,
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
yeah.
They've actually created infrastructure for that now. Like there's Sims, there's Ham, I work with the Austin Music Foundation, which provides education for musicians.
And we have home.
We have home.
Home is helps
Right.
to pay rent for older musicians.
Yeah, you just did didn't you just do?
We did a fundraiser
yeah.
down. One of our board members let us use her beautiful house in San Marcos, and we did a pianorama. And I had my birthday party in March. We did a lot of money and a whole weekend of stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
And that's all women. And that's all women in music business.
Yeah.
So
Was there any kind of like difficulty being a woman at that time, doing your own thing when you became Marcia Ball and you went on and got signed with Capitol? Was there any kind of, because you seem to sort of like have that thing, like, you know, Carol Kay?
yeah.
That, like that kind, like you're just badass and like no one's going to mess with you. That's
Well-
what I feel like about her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You go in and you do your job and
I'm sure there's stuff you had to tolerate, but I wonder if your sheer talent and people unable to really. I don't see you as someone that was ever controlled or tried to mold into something that you're
well,
not.
I know how to accept help too, and there's
Yeah.
that, you know. And I've never taken a stand. Once. Oh God, once famously when I didn't sign the contract that Jerry Wexler offered the band, there was that. But
Well, we all learned.
since then, I generally accept help readily. There's always opportunities to be victimized, and there were those times, when I'd have to squirm out of the office, trying to get paid, and that kind of thing, where you were left with a not so great feeling.
Yeah.
And still, unto this day, I just read about a group, and I didn't even know about them. I think it's called like Book More Women or Hire More Women, and it's a group who acknowledge and pinpoint, put a spotlight on the fact that when you look at a festival lineup, women are still, unfortunately, a novelty.
It's almost like token women.
It's
like, we got a woman on there. Don't worry. Don't yell at us.
We got the woman.
We put her on there.
Yeah, it's really not. On the other hand, you also have to say that as a piano player, I didn't choose the best route. As a piano player, that's also a novelty. I mean, the blues especially, and rock and roll, it's guitar world.
Yeah.
Americana, this is an interesting point of view, but in order to be Americana, in quotation marks, you practically have to start with an acoustic guitar. As if the piano wasn't the original American music instrument when people were starting to play in barrel houses and lumber camps and everywhere else. So it's hard to. I picked not the easiest instrument, and of course I didn't pick my gender, but I'm working with it.
Yeah.
And so I think that we still have a long way to go in terms of equity for women in music, but we've also gone a long way.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I started playing here, there were just a handful of women in the music scene at all.
Yeah.
And now, I don't know what the sheer numbers are, but we certainly have a lot of great, talented, and recognized people.
Yeah. Amazing women. And ones that are from if it was high school, like that were like freshmen when you were like a junior or senior, like a Sean Colvin or something like that, Patty Griffin.
Or like you,
like me.
My guitar player was born the year I graduated from high school. So, it's important to keep that going too.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you got signed to Capitol, how did that go down?
I had a friend here who was from Houston and managing a band from Houston who moved up here because the scene was so happening. The band was called Rat Creek. The guy's name is Chuck Flood. And after he had that part of his adventure, he went to Nashville and went to work with and for a friend of his named Bill Williams in Nashville at Capitol and their country branch. And Chuck took my name, took me as an artist, and it was already after the Fire Dogs, and I had already started my band and was probably by 77 or 8 into my maybe third incarnation of the Marcia Ball band.
Okay, can I interrupt you for just a second? So when you did Austin City Limits in its first season, right?
That was Fire Dogs.
Oh, that was Fire Dogs?
I think so, in 74.
Okay.
With Alvin Crow, maybe was the
I don't know.
Bill. And then I did it, but I may not be right about that. It might have been 75, and it would have been the Marcia Ball
Without
and the Misery
a deal
Brothers
or anything like that. You were just part of this scene, and they were like.
I had the band. I had a band. I'm trying to think, though, if it was the Misery Brothers, and people laugh about that name, but what happened was the Fire Dogs, when we would do some really corny Carl and Pearl Butler type of harmony or something, somebody would say, Marcia and the Misery Brothers. So I named my band after I got out of Fire Dogs.
That's good.
The Misery Brothers. But yeah, I did one in 75, I think. I did one mid through that after my record came out, probably on Capitol. I did a 10-year reunion in 85, and that might have been 74 and 84. I should know better. And then I did one later on with the co-build with Beausoleil. Mm-hmm. And then I did the one with Irma Thomas and Tracy Nelson. So
right.
I did 5 within, over the life of the season.
Awesome.
And then this last year, when I was inducted into
You were
the Hall of
inducted,
Fame.
yeah. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Okay, so sorry, you were talking about the Capitol deal.
Yeah, so they got me up there and offered me a deal, and by that time I was smart enough to do it.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I'd hooked up in 1975 with Carlin Major.
Uh-huh.
And Carlin and her husband, George Majeski, had Soap Creek Saloon. They opened Soap Creek in 1973, and that was another of the enduring and influential clubs in Austin, along with the Saxon in all its incarnations. And then Antone's, which opened in 75. Mm-hmm. So the Armadillo in 70, Soap Creek in 73, and Antone's in 75. And like I said, with the Saxon kind of running as a thread through all that. And they had, Soap Creek had, they were the home of the Cobras, which was,
Paul Ray,
Stevie,
yeah.
Paul Ray and the Cobras, and
yeah.
Stevie was in that band, Denny Freeman, Rodney Craig. The Thunderbirds had a weekly gig there for a long time. That was Doug's hangout, Delbert's hangout. That's where Delbert played. So many things happened at Soap Creek. Well, in 75, I made my first little 45. And at that time, what you do is take it around to the club owners and ask if they'd put it on the jukebox. And you take it to the radio stations and ask if they'd play it on the radio. And I got a little play on KVET Country. I got some play on KOKE-FM. And I got some play out in Gilroy, California at KFAT. And because the record was, this is the 45, on one side it was where I had been, and I yodeled on a song called I Want to Be a Cowboy Sweetheart. And the other side was where I was going, which was a cover of an Irma Thomas song called I Done Got Over.
Okay.
So I took that record to Carlin and George, and this would have been in 75, and Carlin said, I want to try to book bands on the other way. I want to be the seller. I don't want to be the buyer.
Right.
I want to see if I can manage a band and book a band. Would you like to work with me? And I said yes. And off we went. So I had a baby and my first record and a band and an agent for the first time and manager. And we worked together for about 12 years. And she got me that Capitol deal through Chuck and Bill. And later on, she got me my Rounder record deal, too.
Yeah. And you were on Rounder for a long time.
Yeah.
What was the climate like? Who were your label mates at the time of the Capitol time?
Capitol was interesting because Bill Williams was a visionary. And among other things, told me at one point that one day, every song is going to have a video that goes with it. And they're going to play them on TV. This is pre-MTV, pre any of that.
Wow.
This was visionary. He and a woman, Joanne, who actually produced those videos that technology came about. But he signed, first of all, the original Texas Playboys,
okay,
who had come back into life after the record that they made with Merle Haggard called the Last Time Around, I think it was, Last Time Around, yeah, where they got the old Texas Playboys, and Bob Wills was still alive by that time. He was in a wheelchair, and he died soon after that. But that brought the Playboys together again, and Austin City Limits booked them. Their first show, I think, was the Playboys.
Wow.
And Asleep at the Wheel, probably. And Willie was on in that, that was the beginning of Austin City Limits. But Bill Williams signed them to a record deal with Capitol in Nashville, along with Asleep at the Wheel. He had a guy named Mel McDaniel that had some hits. He had Tanya Tucker's sister, LaCosta. He had a wonderful singer, Colleen Peterson, from up in Canada, beautiful singer. He had a guy named Kenny Dale from Houston who had a hit-ish. And he signed me. He was signing young acts to just see what would happen in this bordering on what was still the progressive country, but that was all moving into outlaw,
Right.
which means all that was changing.
Where did that stuff get, like, where was the outlet for it to be played? Because radio was such a small and sort of like, in its own way, not segregated racially, but segregated musically.
Not
you know
that
what I mean?
great. We were getting some play, but we weren't getting a lot of play, and they sure didn't know what to do with me. I'd already moved away from country a lot, and I was going to an R&B. So at one point after my album came out, and they still were trying to get me to do something that worked, they took me to Memphis, which was great, to American Sound, and I recorded Jim Dandy to the Rescue and I'm a Fool to Care, which were definitely on that border.
Right.
Away from country, but more in my wheelhouse.
Traditional sort of like blues-based music.
But ultimately nothing worked, and so we didn't stay with them.
Was the blues world like kind of, was it hard to break in? Because it's in those traditional things, there's a lot of, it's kind of like, I liken it to punk rock, like in the late 70s and early 80s, like once people had an idea of what it was, and then they're like, okay, there are these parameters, you can't be like stepping out of line here.
Well, there is that, and we laugh about it, the Blues Police.
The Blues Police, exactly.
But, honestly, there really wasn't a blues world. Hardly,
I guess not, yeah.
Before the mid-'70s.
Right.
It really took the Rolling Stones bringing it back. A lot of those guys were living up in Chicago or down in New Orleans, and they were, working day jobs and subsisting and barely getting along. And if anybody deserves a whole lot of credit, it's Clifford Antone.
Yeah.
For opening a club and putting those guys on scholarship and paying the price for the money that he had to make to do all that.
Yep.
Because you weren't making it. I asked him one time why, and he was on Guadalupe at the time, did he ever book Little Milton? Why didn't he? He said, "Oh, honey, I booked him here for a week one time. I lost a fortune." People just didn't know him. Clifford was re-educating the world.
So, yeah.
And bringing those guys, buying people their first guitar that they've had in 15 years.
Yeah.
Because they had hawked a guitar.
Right.
Supporting them. So there was not really a blues world, and blues festivals started. I mean, the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival didn't start till about 74.
Oh, okay.
And that was real small, and, in Louis Armstrong Park with Mahalia Jackson and a few local bands.
Now it's like, no doubt.
Yeah, crazy, yeah. It's not so hip anymore.
But you play it.
I played it every year since 78, except one year. And that year, 78, I remember, I have pictures of the Thunderbirds walking around on the fairgrounds, and you just don't see anybody. You see Keith over here and Jimmy over there and Kim over there, and there's just nobody else out there.
Yeah.
This is the fairgrounds, in 78.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
Do you still stay in touch with all those guys that are around?
Yeah, pretty much. And we cross paths at gigs, and now for booking sake, because, things are changing again. And, of course, our music, we've had it our way since 1975.
Yeah.
Really. And those of us who were fortunate enough to be here and build a career, it's been, we've had it our way for a long time. But in many ways, we are being moved over. Like you mentioned, the Jazz Fest having No Doubt and Fish and, people
Lenny
like
Kravitz.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Festivals that used to be like Summerfest in Milwaukee, if they even exist anymore, where there used to be that you could go from my stage to Zachary Richard to Dr. John to Los Lobos, now all those bands would be relegated to this corner where we're being drowned out by whatever loud band is at the big stage next to us. That's happening. It's just
at some point someone was saying that about you guys.
Maybe.
Like now there's these young kids, this girl with a piano.
Yeah.
Who is this? You know what I mean?
Moving us out of the way.
That's one of those interesting things that, I'm going to be 51 next Monday. And there's a thing that I guess since my late 30s, like with Alejandro, you're one of those people that maintained being cool and stayed themselves and didn't like become something else or try to be like, you know what I mean? There's like a,
Well, you know, part of the not signing the contract with Wexler, and man, I can tell you a dozen reasons why I should have, but we didn't have anybody to ask, for one thing. It was a lousy old, R&B contract, but anybody we asked about it, any lawyer would say, well, it's Wexler, sign it.
Yeah.
And we're thinking, well, can't you try to make this? No, it's Wexler, sign it. Oh, God. But, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. But we weren't trying to be Nashville.
right.
We didn't want to go to Nashville
Right.
and, or L.A. A lot of people did. A lot of great musicians from Texas went to L.A. Stephen Bruton went to L.A. Red Young went to L.A. Lon Price went to L.A. A lot of the Dallas and Fort Worth area guys went to L.A. and did great.
Yeah.
They also, a lot of them came back or worked back and forth. But we sitting here with our little ego trips intact, didn't want to be Nashville. We didn't need Nashville. We just wanted to be us. And I think we always remained that way. We had our scene, and, in many ways, I know that I've had it all. I had, I have a family. I had a life. I've gotten to play, but I also have, children and grandchildren, and this lifestyle that Austin, even as it changes, still affords
Totally does. Yeah.
a wonderful lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so there's just no regrets about the choices that I made and why we didn't exactly take them on. And yet, Willie Nelson, we also had that. We had our godfather here who was beating them at their own game.
Yeah. Yeah.
In many ways.
Yeah. Did you watch that country documentary?
I watched a lot of it. Yeah. A lot of parts of it.
That part of it made me very proud to be, even though I'm not in that musical scene. I'm from this thing that's like a big middle finger to the machine, and like, you can come get us, but we're just always going to do what we want.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Everybody
amazing.
always said what we needed was more of the music industry here, record companies, and people would try, but it just...
You're making the hair on my arm stand up. I literally was just saying that Austin Music Foundation before we met up here. Like, I was like, I don't...
Why they didn't come and settle
No,
here?
I don't care.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
why? That's... If they're here, then we're just like the other places. This is like almost... It's like a very fabulous farm club. It's where you get your thing together,
Yeah.
and then you go to those places and
And
blow
you
their minds.
send it out there.
Yeah.
You send it
You can
out
still
there.
go out
They're
there.
going to come get you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know. You don't really have to live there. I mean, what you do when you live there, and I'm not faulting it, but, you become, if you're really good, you do studio work as an instrumentalist or as a singer, and you write songs, you co-write, you go into that machine. But let me tell you, that's all changing too.
Yeah.
Because people are making their own records and they're writing their own songs, and even the most successful songwriters, if the foundation could figure out how to do something, it would be how to get us our money for our songs again.
Yeah.
Because we are in as bad a shape as, or worse, as the most ripped off artist from the 50s ever was. We are not getting money for our songs.
No.
And it's a crime. Somebody is.
Somebody is. Somebody
But it's
is.
not the writer, it's not the creator, and it's not the one who's selling it. Spotify's selling stuff. There's commercials. Every time I look at a YouTube of one of my songs and there's a commercial on before it,
Somebody else is getting that money.
somebody's
No one's
getting
giving
that
it
money,
to you.
not me. So it's a big rip-off, and I don't know how.
How do you put the cat back in the bag, though?
I don't know.
There's no way.
Well,
we got
did
to
at
figure
one
out a way to
point.
work with
We kind
it.
of did at one point, so maybe it just has to happen. I mean, we took the first people who tried to do that to court and shut them down.
Yeah.
So I
You
don't
mean
know.
Napster?
Napster.
I was
Yeah.
signed to Lars Ulrich's label from Metallica when that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's people, Kimmy Rhodes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, she sent me, I realized a couple years ago, she sent me a thing when I was going through my emails, and I did your name. I had an email from her, and she was like, why haven't you ever had Marcia on your show? But I've done like writing with Kimmy, and I did a record, one of her records. I got to be on a lot, and she was very against the whole thing, which I understand.
Well, she made her living all these years as a songwriter. Gary Nicholson's another one.
Yeah.
You know, you supported yourself. You did well. You raised a family. Now, all that is gone. I mean, these people are. It's a hustle now, but I don't understand, and I don't know how they're going to go forward with it. How because you can go out and tour, but now there's the CD technology is going away. I'm only fortunate that my crowd is old and as unhip as I am, and they still have CD players. But that thought crossed my mind. I was like, I feel like probably in the blues world, people are still buying CDs. Yep, but
because they're real fans, they want to have a thing too.
We're aging. You know, we go on the Delbert cruise every year. That being another wonderful thing we've done for now going on 26 years. And the invention of that thing, the blues cruise or the music cruise, started a couple of years before that with the guy in Kansas City, Roger Neighbor, who started the Ultimate Rhythm and Blues Cruise. Mm-hmm. And we do that every year. And we've watched, it's interesting, we have watched from the time that we started when we were so much younger than everybody on those other boats that we'd see, to now we are those people 25, from the time, from our 40s to our 60s.
Yeah.
And, but we're still having more fun. And, but it's interesting to watch the people who have aged, along the way. It's because it's like a family reunion. The same people go every year.
Yeah.
And you spend a week together. And
how much do you tour a year now?
Well, I still seem to be doing about 100 dates a year, which means that, we're out, sometimes up to half the time. Most of my gigs are not in town. It seems like 2020 is lining up to be a good year. I do about 100 with my band. I do probably a dozen fundraisers of some kind. I do more and more solo gigs or unusual types of gigs, like the Pianorama, which is a bunch of piano players and a drummer all at once pounding away.
That's pretty cool.
I took that to New Orleans. We started it here at La Zona Rosa.
Okay.
When Nick Connolly and Floyd Domino and Johnny Nicholas and I all got to thinking that the piano players rarely ever play together film that was made in New Orleans. Uh-huh. Because Alan Toussaint said that, because usually there's only one piano in any given space. Right. And I had La Zona at the time. We just laid out 4 keyboards and got a drummer. I could do anything I wanted. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And
oh, that's right. That was your place. You and Gordon, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I miss that place.
So, me too.
I had a happy hour there in the 90s with Robin Gibb from the Bee Gees' son, Spencer.
Yeah.
We used to do a thing there on Thursdays.
Wasn't
Did you own
it
it there like 97, 98?
No, we didn't.
Okay.
We were out by 94.
Okay.
Came in, opened it.
Still was fun.
Christmas of 89 going into 90. And we're out by 94.
I played a thing there like 6 months ago, like a private thing.
Yeah.
It's an interesting place now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't been in it in 100 years. I drove by it the other day, though. I'm glad they kept LZR.
Yeah.
I mean, you can imagine when we opened it, we thought it was going to be an ice house. It was just the building. Gordon was making chili in the other part, the little Alamo-looking part of the original building. So we had an office and a machine that packed chili in 2 rooms. And then what became La Zona was a carburetor shop. It was just all the open garage doors. And in our mind, it was just put a bar and a pot of chili and a cooler and make it be like a San Antonio ice house where you just pull in.
Yeah.
But we ended up overbuilding and building all the screen porch area
Right.
and everything. But it was that for a long time, and then the warehouse behind was just a warehouse. It all
Yeah.
belonged to the same guy. So the first couple of years when it was just a little building, that was the peak of it. And there was nothing, the great food, the stage in the corner where at the time there wasn't anything that size or anything. So people were coming through. We'd have the Subdudes. We'd have a lot of the Mexican bands from San Antonio, a lot of the Cajun bands, the Zydeco bands, and all the locals were playing. And
It's the first place I ever saw David Halley play.
yeah, like that. Yeah. It was like that. But, yeah.
Man, owning a club, though, must just be such a drag.
Well, I didn't have to do there. That was probably the peak of my traveling. So it was Gordon and his partners and the people who were working there. They did a lot of cool stuff. Our Christmas
Yeah.
Day feeds were great. We would have, several hundred homeless.
That's
coming.
amazing.
And music. You'd look up on stage and there'd be Alejandro and Jimmy Vaughn and Ray Benson. Gordon would say, well, I can't afford that band.
Yeah.
And they'd come and play.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you still talk to Ray a lot?
I see him, yeah.
I like him. I like
Yeah.
that guy a lot.
He's sure been a mover and a shaker. I mean, he's a founder of a HAMP.
Oh, he is?
Oh, Ray and Robin Shivers.
Right.
And
I miss her. I miss her. She was a
yeah,
lovely person.
Yeah, she was amazing. Yeah, they did that.
Yeah. So, do you have a new? You put your last record, the Shine Bright, came out in 2018. Are you planning?
No, I'm not even. I'm writing a little bit, but not really. I'm kind of pushing that thing around the country still.
Yeah.
It's hard to figure out, as we were just saying. I don't know. I'm on Alligator. They're a wonderful record label, and one of the last indie record labels standing and devoted to the blues, and he's been doing it all these years. But I don't know if they're going to even recoup what my budget was for the record.
Yeah.
And he's still out there finding good acts, and that's wonderful. I mean, people like Toronzo Cannon and this Kingfish guy. And he signed, I think he had Tommy Castro for a while. I'm going to be doing some touring with Tommy Castro next year.
Okay.
Both bands. And also with Sonny Landreth.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've done that, and that works real well. But, I've never been in a hurry to I don't make a record every year. I make a record about every 3 years.
Okay.
Is often enough. And
So you got some time.
I do. And I start getting that bug. It starts, after a while, I'll just start eavesdropping and writing stuff down and thinking, oh, that would be a good song. And pretty soon I've got, enough stuff in my notebook and
Yeah.
in my head. And I feel like, okay, and I'm bored with all this other old stuff. So
That
let's go do
happens.
something.
Yeah. I
Right
think that's
now,
kind of
I'm
how I work now.
Digging up some of the older stuff that I really like that we haven't done in a long time. And just kind of running that through.
Yeah. How do you listen to music now on CDs? Do you ever do Spotify or any
I
of those
don't
things?
do Spotify personally. I listen to other people's Spotify. I turn on the television and listen to that blues station. And
on the
there's a
music
lot
TV?
Of,
Oh, yeah,
there's a
yeah,
lot
yeah.
of good stuff that
Yeah.
comes across on that.
Sorry.
I'm thinking about getting one of those Siri or Alexa things where you say, hey Siri, play
Yeah.
such and such, and you get a whole.
I'm Cuban, and my grandmother is Cuban. She's still alive. She's 96, and she saw my aunt had an Alexa at her house, and she's like, I want to do this, but it literally just doesn't work. And she ends up screaming at Alexa and like calling it names. It's pretty awesome.
I bet it's hilarious.
It's very hilarious.
Well, yeah, I think I like that. Like I said, if I could just figure out how to pay. There's times you sit, everybody gets down the hole of watching YouTube videos and stuff, and I know that there's something like this. I don't think it's accessible enough, but something like Tip Jar, something where artists can sign up and that icon goes on your, either on your website or on your, when somebody's watched 3 of your songs on YouTube,
Right.
they can hit tip jar. I'd love to do that. I'd say,
Yeah.
here, let me send them $10. I've enjoyed,
Yeah.
an hour of this, of their music. I want to send them some money. I don't know how we can figure out how to do that, but it would be a start.
There is, but it doesn't work through YouTube and stuff like that. But I'm sure there's got to be a way to connect it technologically. And maybe I just found my first good idea in tech, although I doubt it. Have you heard of a Patreon? People doing the Patreon? It's like people subscribe, say like $5 a month, and then they give that art. But you have to do a bunch of extra stuff. Right? You know what I mean? It's like, and I'll film myself walking down the street telling you what I ate for breakfast or something. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how to. All I know is that when you go play shows, you make money. It's kind of been that way for me. People have given me money, you know what I mean, to do stuff, but I've never really been a big seller. I don't know what that means. But you know what? I've never made my living in the mailbox.
Right. Well, and that's over now, really. I mean,
Yeah.
except that somehow, even with the reduced sales, it's not totally insignificant. I get publishing money. I get a check quarterly, and it's better than a sharp stick in the eye. And sound
SoundScan?
but that would
Exchange.
Sound Exchange.
The one where you go and all of a sudden you had a bunch of money sitting there for like the last 9 years or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get some Sound Exchange money.
Yeah.
I tell you who's, BMI. I think BMI and ASCAP are the ones that I'm angriest at, because they still go into little nightclubs and country dance halls and demand money for people who are bands who are playing cover music, but they're not really representing us legally and legislatively and economically the way they should.
Right. What about the Grammy Association? Well, didn't Carlin Major work? Wasn't she the Grammy lady?
She started that,
Yeah.
the branch, the chapter, the Texas chapter.
Did she also
and
do
Ray
Arista
Ray
as well?
Benson was in on that, and she was the president. The director of it here.
Yeah.
But they do lobbying. Grammy, NARIS lobbies.
They just don't have the money probably behind them.
Well,
so they lost all that
should
money
have
from the record sales.
Yeah, they should have money. It's just that it's influence, and I don't know what it takes. I mean, even people like Taylor Swift, they start protesting that kind of stuff, and it would take, I don't even know what, a total sit down, silence, total silence.
I don't know at this point. It's weird because technology, it's like HAL in 2001. Like we're kind of, I don't think people realize it, but we are there.
Yeah. Yeah, everything's free.
Yeah, and there's a guy that we can't see, like Alexa, she's...
The other thing is, you spend all this money trying to make a good sounding record with all this technology, and then people listen through little earbuds or,
That's not bad. It's the phone speaker that bums
yeah,
me out.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Yeah. What's funny was I did this EP last year, and Mark Hallman mixed it, and Scrappy Judd Newcomb produced it, and the three of us were going over the mixes. And I remember there was like kind of a running argument going on one song. It finally ended with like, no one's even going to fucking listen to this on speakers. They're going to listen to it through their phone. It's going to sound terrible. So why don't we just listen through the phone and then make our mix notes?
I know. Well, do you remember mixing, and you would mix in the studio back when you'd mix at full volume,
Yeah.
deafening volume, and then you'd put it on the small speakers, and then you'd say, run me a tape. I'm going to go right around
Listen
in the car.
Yeah.
Because that was the
Yeah.
final.
Up until like
solution.
10 years ago, that's what I did. I ran out to the car and I listened. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Marcia, I could talk to you all day, but I bet you have things to do. But will you come back on my show?
Yeah.
Again, another
Yeah.
time?
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan, and I knew who you were. You were a large presence, and when you were at the Congress House, You're so nice
Oh,
and so
man.
easy to talk to. I remember a couple times like sitting at the table and talking to you, and then like you would get up and I'd be like, she was totally just talking to me like a person. But I appreciate you. And there was one thing I didn't want to say. The Dreams Come True album. My ex-wife and I had that album. She was really good friends with, what was Jesse Dayton's wife that worked at Antone's Records? The real pretty lady, remember? She's like a supermodel looking.
Oh man, I can't remember. I just saw a picture of all of them though, because Tracy O'Quinn is my stepdaughter, and she worked.
Oh really?
There all those years.
Yeah. Well, the record "Fool in Love."
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like that jam was in our house a lot when that record came out.
That is maybe that and the record with Irma and Tracy are two of the best things and my favorite things that I ever did, but especially Dreams Come True. It was just so fun, and we pulled all those songs together, and I love the way it sounds.
I do too. Who produced that?
Well,
You did?
no, Dr.
guys-
John.
Oh.
Nominally, Dr. John produced that, which is why it took us so long to make it, which is why it's called Dreams Come True. Because Susan Piver said, if they ever finish this record, it's going to be a dream come true. And then I wrote the song Dreams Come True for it. And so Mac produced. Sarah Brown should have been and Angela were executive producers, because Sarah's the one who pulled all the sessions together, picked up Mac at the airport, and got us all, wrangled us all. Stuart Sullivan, we did it at Arlen. Stuart Sullivan was the engineer, very important on it. But I feel like the mix is Angela. And Angela always mixed in your face, and I love Angela's mixes. And I feel like it sounds the way it does because Angela was at Stuart's elbow.
Yeah, that's interesting. That record does have, for lack of a better
Presence.
word, balls.
Yes.
Yeah, presence and balls.
Yes, both.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's great. And some of those songs are so great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did Ike Turner write "Fool in Love"?
He might have.
Yeah.
It was a Tina Turner cover.
So you didn't. What happened when you were up there on that stage with him? You look him in the eyes and go like, "Wow."
Yeah. Oh,
You're
yeah.
that
Because
guy.
it's very controversial. He's already outed as, the wife beater and everything, and so a lot of people were just mad at him, and yet there are people who can deal with the circumstances and the times. And I think that's the slack that Ike Turner was cut. That, they're drinking, they're doing drugs. Yeah, he was mean and crazy. And I don't know. I guess the Me Too movement has put a big exclamation point on all of that,
Yeah.
Because it was long overdue that people were held accountable.
Yes.
For that kind of stuff. On the other hand, like I said, there are, in some cases, there were circumstances. In some cases, there were, everybody was painted with the same brush. And that in some cases should have been a little bit more like a lighter coat. And I'm going to get in trouble for saying all this. You can leave it in or not.
No, but there's even in the music, the blues, there's redemption. Like you don't have to be terrible your whole life. Like that's what the prison system is supposed to be, is a place where you go and pay your debt.
Right.
Redeem yourself.
I don't know whether Ike Turner ever admitted, or if anybody ever asked him, are you sorry for that or anything? And I don't know whether there are people who will grant forgiveness and people who won't.
Right.
For anything.
I don't take blame like that away from anyone like that, but I do believe that there is a cycle that you need to break, that I'm probably sure Ike wasn't the first person in his family to treat somebody else like that he cared about.
Oh, yeah.
He learned it from somewhere. You know what I mean?
And there's always that in many situations. But, yeah, it's like I said, it was way overdue that the
it was.
The
Time's
permission
up.
to be that way
Yeah.
was not granted. And I'm glad it all happened like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that people came out
Yeah.
And we're taken seriously, are taken seriously.
Are taken seriously. And now will be taken seriously and not
Yes.
brushed off or like, oh,
Right.
you know.
And maybe
Well, what were you doing to incite that person to do that? You know what I mean? That's my least favorite.
Yeah.
That's my least favorite approach to like victimization is like, well, what were you doing?
Yeah, you dress like that.
Yeah. All right. So, people, you can go to swansongs.org. Marcia will be entertaining all of you with the great Sarah Brown, who I adore as well. What a
Sarah Brown, Shelley King, Luann Barton.
Luann Barton.
We're gonna do some dreams come true.
Oh, I gotta go.
We'll do stuff.
Yeah.
We'll do Fool in Love.
Okay. Yeah.
Just for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That song was a hit, right? They played it everywhere, or was that just my house?
For us, it was your house.
Yeah. Well, I honestly I love that. I still love it. But I was going through all your stuff and I found it on there. I was like, oh. And I was listening to it. I was like, man, there's just something about the way your voices blend together and the way you sing together and just.
When we sang together, we sounded alike. When we sang individually, you could
tell
definitely
who's who. Yeah.
tell, especially Luann, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I idolize you. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's so killer. That's so great.
Yeah. Well, you're amazing. People can get tickets for Swan Song Serenade, which is the 9th annual Swan Song Serenade, Sunday, October 20th. It takes place at the Four Seasons. You can go to swansongs.org. I think tickets are like $150.
It's
you
like
get some
that.
fancy food at a fancy
Yes.
place and get to see some fancy
Fancy
ladies.
music.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they should just check out Swan Songs anyway. Because it's such an incredible nonprofit doing wonderful work.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing to support.
Yeah. Thanks for doing the show, Marcia.
My
You're
pleasure.
amazing.
Thank you for
Yeah.
having me. Listen to the stories they tell. Feel the planet go round and round. Moon and stars are coming unwound. Love your neighbor, teach your
The legendary Marcia Ball. What a treat that was, man. That was great. Hey, she signed on for a second one, man. We're going to get that going. I'm going to get her back in here. We're going to hear some more stuff. We didn't even get into the 80s or the 90s with her. What an amazing, amazing artist. Hey, gang, listen, seriously. She is the artist that will be performing at the 9th annual Swan Song Serenade, taking place Sunday, October 20th from 6 to 10 p.m. at the Four Seasons. The amazing Jody Denberg is the host. I just saw him at that John Lennon thing. He played, and so did I. And music from Marcia Ball, Sarah Brown, Shelley King. It's going to be a thing. I bet she probably does have some more surprises. We'll see what happens, man. Get your tickets. They're $150. Go to swansongs.org. If you want to find out more about Marcia Ball, see if she's coming to a town near you or when she's playing outside of the Swan Song Serenade, go to marciaball.com for all of your Marcia Ball needs. What a great, great conversation. I'm so stoked that I got to sit down and talk to her. And once again, if you're new to the show, you can find us anywhere you find podcasts: Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Overcast, Apple Podcasts, Android Podcasts, Podbean, of course. You can find all this, on all the places. You'll get a new show every Tuesday and every Friday of me talking to another great musician. And usually not as legendary as Marcia Ball. But you know what? You might meet some new people. And maybe you're just hearing of Marcia Ball because you're from a very younger generation that doesn't really quite know that era of music. All right? So what a great, great artist. What a great conversation. Look for part 2. Probably coming someday. She'll come back. All right. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Have a great weekend, whatever it is you're doing. Remember, if you live in San Antonio tonight, October 11th, Skyrocket will be at Sam's Burger Joint. Go to marciaball.com for all your Marcia Ball needs. Swansongs.org to get your tickets to the 9th annual Swan Song Serenade taking place October 20th, 6 to 10 p.m. at the Four Seasons here in Austin, Texas. Let's get down, baby.
Shine bright.